Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and today we're going to look at the results from the Star City Games Standard Classic in Minneapolis last weekend. This was the last major Standard tournament before the Pro Tour, which begins this Friday. So Protour Dominaria, which of course will consist of limited play as well as standard play. And as we know, Pro Tour weekend leads to a lot of card prices spiking, especially from the most recent set, due to the fact that a lot of that is still being open and still being distributed. So we're going to look at the results from the last weekend's tournament, kind of see if it's going to give us any indication of maybe what's going to happen this coming weekend at the Pro Tour. So let's get right into it. Alright, before we get into Standard, just real quick, I wanted to take a look at the results of the Modern Open, which was the larger event of the two last weekend. Now, as you can see here in the top 8, there's still a lot of diversity in the Modern format. Humans coming in 1st and 6th, Jeskai Control coming in 2nd as well as 5th, Jun coming in 3rd, good news for Jun players, because that deck was looking a little soft recently, hasn't put up the real big results that you want to see, but this is a really fine result. I'm sure cards like Liliana of the Veil, Tarmogoyf, Dark Confidant, they'll probably stabilize this week if nothing else. Eldrazi comes in 4th place, and then we get Burn coming in 7th, and rounding out the top 8 was Affinity. Now, a couple cards from Dominaria actually played a role in this top 8. Let's take a look at them. Maybe no surprise, on your right you see Karn Scion of Urza. Affinity decks have been working on trying to figure out what the right number of Karns is for that deck. Now, the 8th place Affinity deck was running 1 in the sideboard. Maybe the bigger story, though, of the weekend was Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. We've been seeing this for a couple weeks now, but the Jeskai Control decks are running 2 copies of these in lieu of Jace. So both of those Jeskai Control decks had 2 copies of Teferi, no copies of Jace at all. That's a big deal, and if that trend continues, and I have no reason to believe it won't, considering how successful these decks were this past weekend, Teferi is going to play a larger and larger role in Modern as time goes on. Alright, let's look at those Standard Classic results. A couple weeks ago, it was all about red-black aggro dominating GP Birmingham. However, things have changed. You can see there's a lot of diversity in this top 8. As a matter of fact, there's only one red-black aggro deck coming in 8th. Everything else is a unique deck. There are no repeats here. I know, you could argue that some of the aggro decks are very, very similar to each other, and that's true. But some do play very differently as well. So let's look at this top 8. Other than what I mentioned, coming in 8th place, coming in 1st was Mono Red Aggro. Coming in 2nd was White Black Aggro. Coming in 3rd was Green Red Aggro. Coming in 4th was Blue Red Godpharaoh's Gift. Coming in 5th was Blue White Historic. Coming in 6th was Green Black Constrictor. 7th was Blue White Control. So let's look at these deck lists. We'll begin with Mono Red Aggro. And this deck list, I mean, is it much different from the previous metas, Mono Red Aggro? No, not really. I mean, you're pretty familiar with this deck. This, of course, won the tournament. Even though this is a smaller tournament, I do think you'll see a number of these Mono Red Aggro decks next weekend at the Pro Tour. The key card from this deck that you'll want to watch when it comes to value next week is Goblin Chain Whirler. This is not the only deck running this, as you'll see in a few moments. But this is the key card, and when it comes to the main deck, this is the only real upgrade from Dominaria in many of these builds. The sideboard, you do find some other cards like Squee the Immortal this time around. That's actually kind of cool. And Fight with Fire. Fight with Fire, I think, is a very good card out of sideboards. Sometimes even main deckable. We'll see more of it later on. White Black Aggro coming in 2nd place. So this deck feels a little more unique compared to what we were seeing in the past meta. It's still an aggro deck. I mean, it's still running a lot of the cards you're pretty familiar with, but it is including more cards from Dominaria. As a matter of fact, 6 cards in the main: Karn Scion of Urza, Lyra Dawnbringer, Knight of Malice, History of Benalia, Cast Down, Isolated Chapel. As you could imagine, Karn is going to have a huge weekend next weekend. I have no doubt you're going to see Karn repeatedly in these deck lists. Lyra looked pretty good this week too, as well as History of Benalia. Out of the sideboard, you have Gideon's Reproach, Invoke the Divine, and Cast Down. Okay, let's look at the green-red aggro. I'm a little surprised this deck is starting to come around so late. I feel like this was something that I would have expected to see maybe week 1, but it's really developed over the last few weeks. Even during preview season, I was saying I'm sure there's going to be a green-red aggro deck. Well, it's finally here, and it's actually doing pretty well, coming in 3rd place this past weekend. So what are the key cards from Dominaria here? Of course, Llanowar Elves, Fight with Fire, and Adventurous Impulse. Out of the sideboard, you do find Siege Gang Commander. All right, God Pharaoh's Gift. This one's kind of interesting because at the end of the last meta, this deck kind of exploded. It was huge. And then when we moved into the Dominaria meta, this shifted a little bit. And the gift decks were mono red decks, at least the more successful ones. Now, all of a sudden, the Izzet version is making a comeback here, coming in 4th place. Never count out God Pharaoh's Gift. This is the deck that every once in a while kind of disappears for a week or two and then comes back and comes back in a big way. So when it comes to Dominaria cards, maybe not as many as some of these other decks, but it does run some Skirk Prospectors as well as Sulfur Falls. For the most part, the build is pretty much the same that we saw before Dominaria, but it does have a few tweaks. Alright, let's look at Blue-White Historic. This was the deck that really kind of surprised a lot of people, I think, week 1 and week 2. Especially early on in a new meta, seeing so many cards from the brand new set in a deck was a little surprising, but also very refreshing and welcome. It had a couple soft weeks there in the middle, but now coming back in a big way, coming in 5th place here, it's nice to see it putting up a good finish again. And it's got a lot of cards from Dominaria. You're going to find Karin Seinever's Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, Lyra Dawnbringer, you kind of see the trend here, of course. Raf Capuchin, Ship's Mage, History of Benalia, Seal Away, Blink of an Eye. Out of the sideboard, hey, another copy of Karn, because why not? Alright, coming in 6th place is Green-Black Constrictor. Now, this is a deck that truly feels like a deck from the past meta, actually the past couple metas. Very successful deck. It's still carried over into this meta. It can be very successful. It did get a couple key upgrade cards, though, actually. You see these all the time in these builds now. Llanowar Elves, Adventurous Impulse, and Woodland Cemetery. Maybe a little more surprising out of the sideboard. These are trying to run a Karn now, so that's kind of interesting. Also Cast Down. Alright, Blue-White Control coming in 7th place. Now, this is a deck that has actually looked really strong. Some of the bigger tournaments, it's actually put up better results. So I do feel like this is going to be one of the key archetypes to watch this weekend at the Pro Tour. Aggro will be big, because aggro is always big, but I do think you're going to see a lot of Blue-White Control this weekend, too. The key cards to watch for, Teferi, again, of course, Seal Away, Blink of an Eye. Out of the sideboard of this build, Lyra Dawnbringer, Gideon's Reproach, and Invoke the Divine. Okay, one last deck to look at. Let's look at this red-black aggro deck in case you haven't seen it enough from its success previous weeks. Again, it does have a lot of the same elements we've seen in some of these other aggro decks. This leans a little harder, though, on the Heart of Kirin's for success. Again, the only real change, though, that you would see from a deck like this in the past as opposed to this meta is Goblin Chainwhirler. But again, another very important card that pushes the power level of a deck like this. Out of the sideboard, we have a copy of The Eldest Reborn. Okay, those are the results from this past weekend. My advice to you is simply this. Over the next few weeks, if you want to play with any of the cards that we featured in today's video and you don't own them yet, you probably want to pick them up before Friday. Starting Friday, the Pro Tour is going to put a big spotlight on probably every single one of these cards that we talked about today. They will spike, at least for a while. It might be temporary, sure, but they're going to become more expensive in the short term. So again, if you don't want to overpay and you do want to play with them at least within the next month, month and a half, I would try to pick them up sooner than later, actually. Now, for the rest of the week, we'll kind of follow things, see if there's any news going on. If not, we'll kick back, maybe have some fun with some pack openings, maybe open some Dominaria, see what we can get. Next week, of course, we will cover the results of the Pro Tour, as well as the impacts to the market. Saturday, we'll have our normal market watch as well. But until next time, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.